the municipality to order at 5:30 p.m. Call the meeting to order and introduction of amendments to the agenda.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I have none.
Thank you. Motion that the agenda for the statutory public meeting of December 15th, 2021 be approved as presented. Moved by Councillor Lego, seconded by Councillor Fenelon. All in favor? Carried. Declarations of pecuniary interest.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I have none.
Thank you. M&M sewage disposal. We have official plan amendment number OP05-2021 and zoning bylaw amendment number Z10-2021. The applicant. This public meeting is being held pursuant to section 1722 and 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13, as amended by M&M Sewage Disposal Limited for lands legally described as Lot 9, Concession 1, Vermilion Additional. The purpose and effect of the applications are to permit septic drying beds on the subject lands. The proposed use includes 4 septic drying beds and occupies an area of approximately 4,000 square meters. The subject lands are located on Crown lands, and the applicant is in the process of applying for a land use permit from the Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources, and Forestry, and environmental compliance approval from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Parks. The subject lands are located within the Crown land designation of the official plan and are located within the natural resource zone in the zoning bylaw. The applications to permit the proposed use on a site-specific basis are required as the proposed use is not a permitted use within the Crown land designation of the NR zone. The planning coordinator will confirm how notice was served to advertise this public meeting.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, notice was circulated to internal staff and external bodies by email. Notice was also advertised in the Sioux Bulletin and on the municipal website and social media. It was also sent by mail to property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, as well as various agencies, and signs were posted at the property entrance.
Thank you. The planning coordinator will provide a summary of the application.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lawrence. An application for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment was submitted by Sherry Bache on behalf of M&M Sewage Disposal Limited for the subject lands located off of Goody Lake Road. The lands are legally described as Lot 9, Concession 1, Vermilion Additional. The subject lands are Crown lands and are generally located 5.2 kilometers west of Hudson. The applicant is proposing to construct 4 septic drying beds on the land. The subject lands are designated Crown land in the official plan and are zoned natural resource in the zoning bylaw. Neither the Crown land designation nor the natural resource zone permits a septic drying bed use, and so an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment is required. The subject lands are cleared, and further clearing of the land should not be required because of the proposed site size. The subject lands are accessed via an existing entrance off of Goody Lake Road. Other surrounding land uses include Crown lands and aggregate extraction sites. Goody Lake Road is a Crown land that is currently, Goody Lake Road is a Crown road that is currently maintained by Sioux First Nation, where the subject lands are located. The applicant was required to reach out to Sioux First Nation for feedback on the proposed development as part of the application process. Municipal staff also reached out to Sioux First Nation by letter and email prior to official notification sent out as legislated in the Planning Act. Neither the applicant nor municipal staff received any feedback from Sioux First Nation regarding the applications. The applications are consistent with the provincial policy statement, as the proposed use would be considered an other rural land use, which is permitted on rural lands. The PPS also requires that waste management systems be of an appropriate size and type for current and future requirements, and designed and located in accordance with provincial legislation and standards. The Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources, and Forestry, as well as the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Parks, are the permitting authorities for these types of uses, and the applicant will be required to follow their approval process and requirements. The official plan amendment would redesignate the subject lands to the waste management facility designation in order to permit the septic drying beds. Compatibility of the use has been considered in this application, as land use conflicts are to be avoided. The proposed use is located in a remote location in a rural area of the municipality and is not located near any sensitive land uses. As such, no land use conflicts are anticipated if the proposed use is permitted. It is also staff's understanding that once the septic drying beds are at capacity and cannot be used anymore, the site is decommissioned and the land use permit expires or is canceled. The land would return to its natural state and aggregate uses or other uses could happen on the subject lands. The zoning bylaw amendment would rezone the subject lands to the waste disposal zone to permit the septic drying beds. As the subject lands are on a portion of Crown lands, there is no typical lot with frontage and area. The site-specific zone would be applied to the boundary of the subject lands, and minimum lot area and lot frontage would not apply. One comment was received from the Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources, and Forestry, which noted that the application has not yet been received by them and that the boundaries of the site may change during the ministry approval process. These comments were discussed with the applicant, who did not wish to expand the proposed boundary of the site. Staff are, however, recommending an increase to the site area so that the applicant does not have to come back for further municipal approvals should the site plans change slightly during the ministry's approval process, and this has been reflected in the draft amendment schedules. It is staff's opinion that the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications are consistent with the provincial policy statement. There are no anticipated land use conflicts. The use is appropriate for rural lands at this location. Legislation and requirements from the appropriate approval authorities will apply, and the use will facilitate needed waste storage for the area. It is recommended that the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment be passed.
Thank you. Correspondence from government agencies and municipal staff. Planning coordinator will read out any correspondence received.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence. So as mentioned, one letter was received by the Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources, and Forestry, and it reads as follows. Good morning. Please note the MND-MNRF has not received an application for this project at this time. We will complete the application with due process once it has been submitted. While M&M Sewage can apply to have the area rezoned, we cannot guarantee the area rezoned and the parcel of land that they receive upon completion of a successful application for the property will completely align with this zoning bylaw amendment. Regards.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you. Correspondence from members of the public. The planning coordinator will read out any correspondence received.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, no comments have been received from the members of the public.
So before we go to the applicant's presentation, this might be the appropriate time for me to say that on November 22nd, I had been invited to the Sioux First Nation Council meeting, and I attended the council meeting, and it was an informal update on various things between the municipality and Sioux. And I mentioned this application and the need for these drying beds, and encouraged them, if they had any comments, to respond to the inquiries that were sent to them. This is informal, and I'm not sure if it can be included in the planning summary or not, but it in fact was there. It was the full council was there along with staff. So I just add that to this, that it was just another way of communicating with them, and my understanding was that at that time no concerns were expressed. The applicant's presentation. The applicant or representative is invited to speak to the application.
No, I think that everything's been, I think everything has been covered, unless council or anyone has any other questions from the public. I think it's been addressed. We're looking at putting that site in, and if there's any questions from council, we're willing to answer them.
Thank you. That's the next item on the agenda. Questions from members of council. So I'll start with Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. Is this the same? I have a couple of questions. Is this the same? It's the same as what was attempted to do a few months ago over by Pelican. Is it? Is it the same?
We're not sure what they were trying to do there. Yeah, it's not the same applicant applying for it. It's M&M Sewage applying for it with an obligation I have to K Contracting to provide them with a sewer site they were unable to purchase my existing sewer site because I have a landfill site attached to my sewer site. And they don't want to take over my existing landfill site because they're worried about contamination from the landfill. So part of my obligation is to build a site for K Contracting. And so I'm just fulfilling that obligation.
But it's the general purpose is the same. It's a sewage drying bed.
Yes, exactly.
And is it next to the waste management site that you have, which I've seen? It's
no,
not
it's
near
not.
there. Okay.
Not in.
Because the one that I've seen is you go past Hudson and then you go down towards the lake and it's on your left, I think.
Yeah,
That's the.
not anywhere near the same location.
It's not near there. Okay. I was going to ask, I could see that getting something definite from Sioux could be very important. And
we tried four times with letters going to the First Nation. Yeah. And no response. And as Mr. Doug Lawrence had gone to a meeting with the First Nations and they still have no response. So this application was tied up already for a month because there was no response. You know.
I just wonder what, it might be worthwhile yourself just making the phone call right directly to the chief or going out there just to because
we have done it. We have done that 4 times.
We've
exhausted all avenues with the First Nation. We've personally called the mayor to follow up on it, and we're willing to go to the OMB if they want to protest it because we're done with trying to communicate, and they're not commenting on to this date. They still not commented on it. So I think we can move forward with this.
Yeah, it's just my experience has been that with First Nations, it's best if there's a personal contact, like just going right directly, a phone call right to the chief. That letters are often, if the issue is not pressing, they're put aside.
Well, I think our mayor has made a personal presentation on my behalf and had no response. So I think he's done a great job asking for their feedback on that. And we're all about their feedback, and we haven't had it.
I'll move on. Councillor Lego.
Yeah, no, I think this is a good place for it. It'll be off the main road a bit. It'll be gated, it'll be posted. So I have no issue with this going forward.
Councillor Fenelon.
Yeah, I have no comment on it. Everything looks like it's been done and done properly, so I agree with it.
Thank you. Councillor Howie.
So I have a couple questions, I guess, to staff regarding the application. So, obviously we've discussed the First Nation being notified, and that you cited was under the legislative framework that they had to be notified, correct? And I was just
sorry, Robbie. This is to staff, I think. Thanks, Robbie.
Yeah, to staff. So I was just wondering if you could outline the framework and what conditions permit the notification of the First Nation, or if that is simply because of road maintenance and ownership, or if there's proximity to First Nation or treaty that apply there.
Jody, is this CBO? Is this you?
Sorry, can you repeat again? I don't really understand what you're saying.
I was wondering under what parameters the First Nation, Sioux specifically, is notified regarding zoning applications, if it was strictly because of the maintenance of the road or geographic proximity or treaty obligation. It was cited that it's legislated, but I was wondering under what specific conditions.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence. Yeah, I think we're basing it based on the fact that it's on the road that they maintained and on their main access to their community as well as proximity.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question, I was wondering if any environmental assessments or reviews have been performed on the proposed application, which would lead into my final question, which just around the fact an application hasn't been received by the appropriate provincial ministry, and their letter cites that things may change, such as size, site. I was wondering if there is experience with the ministry throwing off a zoning bylaw from the municipality. So,
Jody, CBO.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence. Yeah, so you're right. This is kind of the first step in their process, and I believe the site there has been some kind of test pits done to determine soil conditions to show that it is suitable for this type of use. But yeah, they still got a process to go through, and there will be consultations there. There will likely be some type of environmental assessments. And, you know, this is kind of, like I say, this is the first step in the road for them.
okay, so this process isn't necessarily a requirement for submission of an application to the ministry, or does this zoning have to occur before the application can be submitted?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, it's kind of a tricky process. Typically they're done concurrently because, you know, in an effort like MNRF or not, and yeah, I can't remember what they're called now, but they would contact us through their application process and approval process, and that would be our comments to them that it doesn't meet zoning. And then at that time, they'd have to go through that process. So they're taking this is the step that they're taking first. And, you know, MNRF is aware of what we're doing and what they're doing. And now it'd be up to the applicant after this to go to those approval authorities and go through their processes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think this is in some ways, we had a recent application, which I won't name, but there was criticism that they didn't go through the zoning process or find out about the zoning process before they bought the property. So here we have a proponent who's going through the zoning process before he goes through the calculations with the ministry to acquire the property. It makes sense to me. If we don't pass the zoning, there's no point in going to the MNR. So I personally think it's probably the right process, although as Jody says, it can be a little bit complex or convoluted with the ministry involved, but there's been discussion. And Councillor Bath.
Just a quick question for Kirsten. What was the date on the MNDRF letter?
Yes, through you, Mayor Lawrence. That email was sent on December 6th.
Good.
That's it. Thank you. Councillor, I've missed somebody, I think. Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks, Mayor Lawrence. No, my only comment was again kind of around the procedure with how the application was going through. It seemed like the other application that went forward closer to town had a bit of a different process, but a planning coordinator answered my question in her initial comments with regards to expanding the size to hopefully be inclusive if the site does move a little bit. So if staff's comfortable with that approach, I'm good with it. So I support this.
Thank you. Anything further, council, before we go to members of the public? Seeing nothing, members of the public are invited to speak to the application. The public can ask questions of clarification or seek background information, speak in support of the application, or speak in opposition to the application. All questions will be directed through the chair. It is requested that only one question be asked at a time. Please identify yourself before you ask your question so that you can be properly recorded for the minutes of the meeting. Questions from members of the public? Clerk, are there any members of the public on board here?
Mayor Lawrence, yes. Derek Kay is attending the meeting. He did indicate a little earlier in the presentation he wanted to speak, so he may wish to do.
Mr. Kay. Mr. Kay, you're on mute right now. If you want to speak, please let us know. Mr. Kay, are you there? Robbie, could I ask you to mute because you're the only one not muted right now. Robbie Beige, could you mute? I just want to see if I can pick up Mr. Kay. Mr. Kay, one last call here. Would you like to speak? We're not hearing you. Sorry, Mr. Kay, you're not coming through at all. I'm not sure if that's a technical problem. I'm assuming since you're unmuted, there's a technical problem there. So would you like to, clerk, how can I, from Derek Kay, everyone, yes, meaning you would like to speak?
Oh. So Mayor Lawrence, it appears that he is having some audio difficulties on his end.
Anything further, clerk? Or our audio is not working. There is a phone dial and number available if that would help. Okay, thanks from tech support. While we're waiting, I'll disappear for 3 seconds. I'm going to close my door because I'm getting a bit of feedback.
Our friends at Encompass, could you include in the chat the landline number that Mr. Kay could use, please?
I think it's important we attempt to make contact, clerk.
Okay, so Mr. Kay, if you note there in the chat, there's a toll-free number that's been listed, 1-855-703-8985. Pardon me. If you'd like to dial that number, and then they'll prompt you for the meeting ID, and that is also in the chat.
Sounds like you're in, Mr. Kay. Go ahead, try it.
Can you hear
Yes,
me?
we can. Speak up though, thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
I don't know exactly what's going on here. Myself and Mr. Beige have a no competition clause, and this area is outside of our agreed upon area. We have a legal binding agreement that says kilometers from our site, 83 Mill Road. So I'm not sure what's going on. In the agreement, it also says it has to be mutually agreeable between both parties, and I haven't been consulted at all. So, and it's way farther than we intend to travel.
So this is the council, this statutory public meeting is to deal with the application at hand. If there's a dispute between the two parties, that's not something that we're going to put on air here at the meeting. But it certainly throws a concern into this. Clerk, do you have any suggestions from your background on how to proceed here?
Through Mayor Lawrence, you are right that if there is a business disagreement between these companies, that is something that they would need to address outside of the process. However, this particular comment from Mr. K will be reflected in the minutes of the meeting as a concern with respect to the application. It will be at council's discretion as to whether or not to grant the approve the application this evening or send it back to staff for further investigation.
Very good. Mr. K, anything else?
No, that's all.
Thank you. Well, that concludes this concludes the public meeting regarding the official plan amendment number OP05-2021 and zoning bylaw amendment number Z10-2021. If any member of the public wishes to be notified of the decision of council in respect of the application, you must make a written request to the planning coordinator. Notice to appeal the decisions of council to the Ontario Land Tribunal must be filed with the planning coordinator no less than 20 days from the date of the notice of decision is circulated. Notice to appeal shall be sent to the attention of the planning coordinator, and it must include the following information. The notice of appeal shall be sent to the attention of the planning coordinator. That's a repetition. The reasons for the appeal and the fee as prescribed under the Ontario Land Tribunal Act in the amount of $1,100 payable by certified check to the Minister of Finance, Province of Ontario. Only individual, corporations, or public bodies may appeal the decision of council to the Ontario Land Tribunal. An appeal may not be filed by an unincorporated association or group. A notice of appeal may be filed in the name of an individual who is a member of the association or group. Council, we have, I think now in this case, two options. Option one, if there are no opposing comments raised at the December 15th, 2021 statutory public meeting, we have one resolution, and if there are opposing comments received, we at the statutory public meeting, then we have another one. And so the first one will adopt the recommend the zoning bylaw, receive it, and send it to our council meeting tonight to do the zoning bylaw change. The second option sends it back to the planning department to further detail the report and bring it back to council in a month or two's time. So perhaps what I will do is I'll put the second option on the floor first and see if it's accepted or defeated. Maybe Clerk, any suggestions on which way to go? Option one or two first?
That's entirely at your call, Mayor Lawrence. Either option is fine.
You know what? I'm going to keep it in the order of the agenda, so there's less chance of whatever. So option one, the council receives the planning report dated December 15th, 2021, respecting official plan amendment number OP05-2021 and zoning bylaw amendment number Z10-2021, and the council authorizes the adoption of official plan amendment number 5 by the passing of bylaw number 113-21, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 84-18, being a bylaw to adopt an official plan for the Corporation of Municipalities of Silicon, and further, the council authorizes the passing of bylaw number 114-21, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 85-18 as amended. Mover, which isn't a vote, it's just Councillor Bath, seconded by Councillor Fenlon. Any further discussion? Councillor Cassidy.
I think we should put a bit of a hold on this. I don't think we should move ahead with this at this meeting. While I do agree that a business-to-business arrangement should be executed outside of council, I have concerns that we could be pushing a zoning amendment that might not be utilized. I believe the cause for concern here is real, and I think we should just defer this at least until the next meeting and allow the two businesses to sort this out. And if this continues to come back to the table, then we deal with it then. But I don't support moving ahead with this tonight.
Any further discussion before I call the vote on this? Councillor Howie.
Yeah, similar comments and support for Councillor Cassidy's comment and thoughts to kind of wait this out till we have more information. Also, not having any feedback from the First Nation doesn't necessarily mean that they're in support of this or not in support of it. So I'd like to have some kind of commentary from that, especially given it is their access road to community that we would be utilizing, or a business, sorry, would be utilizing. We would be rezoning along that road. So I support waiting till next meeting.
Council, any further comments on the motion on the table? All in favor? 3, that's defeated. Motion, the council receives the planning report dated December 15th, 2021, respecting official plan amendment number OP05 2021 and zoning bylaw amendment number Z10-2021. And further, the council directs staff to prepare a subsequent planning report for presentation to council at a subsequent council meeting that considers the feedback received at the December 15th, 2021 statutory public meeting. Moved by Councillor Fanlon, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Discussion, any further discussion? I think we've had the discussion, but all in favor? Carried. So this will, what happens, okay, get to that in a minute. Let's do the confirmatory bylaw, that bylaw number 119-21 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council of the municipality of Sioux Lookout, December 15th statutory public meeting be read a first, second, and third time and passed. Moved by Councillor Lego, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. All in favor? Carried. So, Mr. Bays, this means that it's going back to staff and to follow up on the comments made from the public at this meeting, and then it'll be brought back again. I'm assuming it'll be brought back again, but we hope with
Well, no worries. And the application really has nothing to do with K contracting. There's, maybe I'm coming out of retirement. You never know.
Okay, so.
And no, that's fine. I don't, that's fine. There's other people like Starrett's in Hudson are looking at a sewage site in Hudson for their house.
We should.
Lac Sioux floating lodge looking at a house. So.
I'll cut your conversation short. It's not, but you're free to make a delegation to council and discuss all these things if you'd like to as well.
Okay.
But it's the First Nation. We've tried.
So thank you.
And then back to the First Nations, Lawrence Mayor, we've tried 4 times to tell your council members. You've tried personally for us.
The town itself.
And there's nothing, there was nothing that was said tonight that made the application contingent on a response.
No, the councillor did say
that wasn't, Mr. Beja wasn't voted on. That wasn't part of anything the council decided. It was just a comment from a councillor.
All right. Okay. Very good. No worries.
Thank you for your patience.
So do we go to the OMB with this, or do we wait for another?
I would, my next step, if I were you, is to speak to staff.
Okay.
We'll talk to Chris and Julie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Robbie, there is no more OMB. It is what we thought. It's the Ontario Land Tribunal. Did I get that right, clerk? The Ontario Land Tribunal is now what the OMB used to be.
I'm sure we'll be there. I don't mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. I think we can just move into the regular meeting. Is that fair? Anybody need a break? We've only been at it for 35 minutes. So I'll call the regular meeting of council. Sorry, Mr. Beige, could you turn off you're welcome to stay, but could you mute?
No, we're fine. Thank you.
We're going to
Good
just
night.
leave the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll call the regular meeting of council to order at 6:04 p.m. Introduction of amendments to the agenda.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I have none.
Thank you. Motion that the agenda for the regular council meeting of December 15th, 2021 be approved as presented. Moved by Councillor Howie, seconded by Councillor Fenlon. All in favor? Carried. declarations of pecuniary interest?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I have none.
Thank you. And we have a motion that the minutes of the regular council meeting and the statutory public meeting held on November 17th, 2021, and the November 7th, 2021 special council meeting be approved as presented. Moved by Councillor Fanlon, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. A motion to receive that the minutes of the Kenora Home for the Aged Board meeting held on October 27th, 2021, and the Northwestern Health Unit Board of Health meeting held on October 22nd, 2021 be received. Moved by Councillor Lego, seconded by Councillor Fanlon. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. 7.1, 2022 interim tax levy. 7.2, 2022 temporary borrowing bylaw municipality. 7.3, victim support grant bylaw number 115-21. Councillor Timpson. 7.4, NOHFC agreement, Hillcrest Development Project. 7.5, health and safety policies and procedures. Councillor Howie. 7.6, COVID-19 workplace vaccination policy. I think we need to lift this. There's some, yeah, Councillor Lego. So we have lifted 7.3, 7.5, and 7.6. Is that right? Correct, Clerk? Motion to adopt the items not requiring separate discussion. Item 7.1, item 7.2, item 7.4. Moved by Councillor Lego, seconded by Councillor Bath. All in favor? Carried. Delegations, presentation of staff service awards. It's my pleasure to be able to, in this COVID times, it's not a pleasure to be able to see the people. That would have been a real pleasure, but it's a pleasure to read out the staff recognition awards employees list. Art Hankey. Art is an airport operations technician and is celebrating 10 years of service with the municipality this year. Diana Lorto. 10 years ago, Diana started out in the finance department. She has also been a part of the recreation and culture department and is currently the administrative assistant at Public Works. Jeremy Funk. Jeremy is a captain and training officer and has been with our fire department for 10 years. Kevin Elliott. Kevin has spent 10 years with the municipality as an airport operations technician. Maurice Bouchard. Mo is registered early childhood educator and has spent 10 years with our daycare department. Riley Picklick. Riley has two positions with our daycare, one being cook and one being a childcare worker. She has been with our daycare department for 10 years. Shane Kressel. Shane has been with the development services as a facilities caretaker for 10 years. Brian McKinnon. Brian has been with the municipality for 15 years. In that time, he has worn a lot of different hats, including cemeteries and licensing coordinator, community development and facilities coordinator, communications manager, and is currently the manager of corporate services and municipal clerk. Dave Gall. Dave is an operator with the Recreation and Culture Department, has been with the municipality for 15 years. Adam Tilburg. Adam has spent 20 years as a municipal employee. He has worked in the Public Works Department and is currently an operator with the Recreation and Culture Department. Dave Kolcheski. Dave is a volunteer firefighter and has been with our fire department for 20 years. Phyllis Dell. Phyllis is a registered early childhood educator and has been part of the daycare department for 20 years. And finally, Ken Schultz. Ken is a volunteer firefighter and has been with our fire department for 25 years. So congratulations to all and thank you to all. I'm not sure how many are on board, but staff will pass along that we read out their recognition of their employment with the municipality and thank them for it. Consideration of items requiring separate discussion. And we'll start with victim support grant. That council authorizes the passing of bylaw number 115-21, being a bylaw to authorize and direct the mayor and the clerk to execute a transfer payment agreement between the corporation of the municipality of Sioux and Her Majesty the Queen in right of Ontario as represented by the Ministry of the Solicitor General, Victim Support Grant 2021 to 2023. Moved by Councillor Fanlon, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. And we'll start the discussion with Councillor Timpson.
My question is, well, I have one question and one concern. What is the rationale for it coming through the municipality and not through the OPP? I couldn't find that in the report. And secondly, given that this is a fairly sensitive matter that we'll be dealing with, and if you reading the proposal, there'll be all sorts of supports and so on for people that would be doing the testimonies. What liability could we have, given that we are not a social agency or a mental health agency, but we're allowing the money to filter through us?
So CAO, I think you can answer these questions.
I believe that the first question was, so this grant is much like a previous grant that was applied for through the Police Services Board and for victims in crisis, and that was to support a mobile crisis nurse with the OPP. And part of it is that the OPP cannot apply for this funding on their own, so they have to go through another venue. And so this is a second grant that they've applied for, and we did administer the first grant on their behalf as well. And anything having to do with confidentiality and with the mobile crisis team and the funding that they're getting, it stays that way. We're just administering the grant on their behalf.
But does that place us in any liability?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Anything further, Councillor Timpson?
No.
Thank you. Council, any other questions here? I see none. I hear none. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 7.5, health and safety policies and procedures. The council authorizes the passing of bylaw number 95-21, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 54-20, being a bylaw to establish a health and safety policy for the corporation of the municipality of Sioux and to adopt certain health and safety policies. Moved by Councillor Howie, seconded by Councillor Lego, and we'll start the discussion with Councillor Howie.
I just wanted to add the importance of the proof of vaccination program and also the expanded eligibility of vaccinations. I think that's great. I think, you know, our vaccine rates in our region are exceptional. Looking at the 12 and above, at least I think 98% of those eligible have received at least a first dose within the Northwest Health Unit. So I just want to say, well done, everyone.
Thank you. Council, around the table, any further comments on this item? Last call for item 7.5. CAO, you have a comment? Yeah.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence. This policy, if you notice on it, we actually put it into place September 22nd, 2021. And I kept trying to bring it to council, but every time I brought it to council, there was new OREGs that came out or directives from the health unit. So those have been incorporated into this policy. The only thing is I asked for council's indulgence. I have to edit it again. So if we can pass this policy this evening and put in the edits that we just received with reference to organized sport for youth 12 to 17 that have to be fully vaccinated as of December 20th. That just came in last Friday and I didn't have a chance to update the policy. And there's also reference to exemptions from exemptions from vaccinations, proof of vaccinations for people with medical conditions, that they now have to get a letter from their medical practitioner with a specific QR code. So that will have to be incorporated in this policy as well for staff to follow.
So you're asking for a friendly amendment to include that those items be said to be included as we pass this resolution.
Correct. Thank you.
So it's on the table, and I would just ask the mover and seconder, you're okay with that? I think this was moved. I think it was, I think Councillor Lego or Councillor Howie. Clerk, who were the movers?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, moved by Councillor Howie, seconded by Councillor Lego.
Thank you. Good with doing that as a friendly amendment? Yeah, I see positive. Any further discussion, Council? All in favor? All in favor? Sorry, carried. Thank you. Can I do that again? I'm sorry, there were some hands that I just want to make sure I had 4. All in favor? Thank you. Carried. 7.6 COVID-19 workplace vaccination policy. The council provides direction to staff regarding the recommendation to include members of council and members of council's boards, commissions, and committees in the municipal COVID-19 vaccination policy. And further, that council authorizes the passing of bylaw number 122-21, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 87-20, being a bylaw to establish a health and safety policy manual for the corporation of the municipality of Sioux, and to adopt certain health and safety policies as amended COVID-19 vaccination policy. Moved by Councillor Bath, seconded by Councillor Fenelon, and we'll start the discussion with Councillor Lego.
Thank you very much. We'll start with the report states that mandatory vaccination is based on having a safe working environment. So what I'm hearing from staff is that with a 0.01% of the Northwest Health Unit population passing away while being positively tested with COVID over a 21-month period, that justifies mandating vaccines. It is not like the 0.01% is from just yesterday. It is over that 21-month period. The numbers provided by publichealthontario.ca do not indicate age, nor does it indicate the other comorbidities of the 8 people that unfortunately passed away while being tested positive for COVID. Also from the publichealthontario.ca, this 0.01% is consistent from the 7 health units from Parry Sound to the Manitoba border. Yet we are told this is a safety issue. With such low numbers for such a large part of Ontario, forcing vaccine mandates claiming public work safety to me is illogical and morally wrong, considering the only other options being offered is either testing and the employee paying for that out of his own pocket or their own pocket, or termination. Is there any other data used to substantiate such a drastic measure, or is it just because the province has told us that we need to do this? That is my first question. These questions don't have to be answered right now. Secondly, if the vaccine mandate is passed tonight, will the municipality continue to marginalize and remove the voice of the unvaccinated citizen from the council table and committees, Or will accommodations be provided to elected officials or future elected officials, non-vaccinated officials, and volunteers? Currently, the unvaccinated make up around 25%, 20 to 25% of the Northwest House Unit's population. Is it staff's intention to silence that group's voice by denying representation? Are we moving to a place where the unvaccinated will no longer be able to hold public office? It looks like these government mandates are forcing the unvaccinated into what is called an involuntary group membership, which puts them in a category of minority status. Also, 0.07% of the Northwest House Unit's population, or 64 people, have been hospitalized over this 21-month period. This is a 0.17 hospitalization rate for each day of the pandemic, or 1 hospitalization per week for the whole Northwest Health Unit. Again, this data is from publichealthontario.ca, and it shows that this population hospitalization rate of 0.07% is the same across all 7 health units from Parry Sound to the Manitoba border. This number only changes when you add the Greater Toronto area, and it becomes 2%. So 99.8% of Ontario have not been hospitalized over the past 21 months. These mandates are considered discriminatory under the Canadian Human Rights Act. Quoting from the Human Rights Act, prohibited grounds of discrimination, Section 3(1). For all purposes of this act, the prohibited grounds of discrimination are race, national and ethnic origin, color, religion, age, sex, sexual orientation, identity or expression, marital status, family status, genetic characteristics, which I have underlined and highlighted, disability, and conviction of an offense. Part 3 of Section 3, where the grounds of discrimination is refusal of a request to undergo a genetic test or to disclose or authorize the disclosure of the results of a genetic test, the discrimination shall be deemed to be on the grounds of genetic characteristics. A nucleic acid inserted in the function of a specific and or the characteristics of a modification introduced is an example of genetic characteristics. Definition of the mRNA vaccine. mRNA is a nucleic acid. Definition of COVID vaccine from the Canadian Public Health website. A COVID vaccine is a genetic code that provides the blueprint for the body cell to make the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. And that contains multiple nucleic acids with messages. But we're also told that the encoded spike protein is not the same as the natural SARS-CoV spike protein. And the genetically coded spike protein does not provide the same immunity response or protection as natural infection. Yet the municipality wants everyone to take an injection that provides subpar immunity response. And if they do not, they could lose their job. At no time have Ontario health authorities provided the public with any early treatments or off-label therapeutics to combat COVID. It has been from the start a vaccine or bust campaign, which I find extremely odd and perplexing that citizens have been left to suffer and die unnecessarily, in my opinion. You would think the medical profession would throw everything they had, including other treatments and other therapeutics, from the beginning of this. Instead, all we have seen is suppression of that vital information. Under the Human Rights Act, these mandates are discriminatory against employees. Under the Human Rights Act, employment, Section 7, it is a discriminatory practice, directly or indirectly, to A, refuse to employ or continue to employ an individual, or B, in the course of employment, to differentiate adversely in relation to an employee on a prohibited ground of discrimination. You are not allowed to discriminate based on whether someone has a genetic characteristic in them or not, whether it's natural or inserted. Assessment of value of work. Section 2, In assessing the value of work performed by employees employed at the same establishment, the criterion to be applied is the composite of the skill, effort, and responsibility required in the performance of the work and the conditions under which the work is performed. You are not allowed to assess an employee based on genetic characteristics, but only on their skill, effort, and responsibility. I just have a couple more. I would say I'm surprised by government overreach and discriminatory policy, but growing up in this part of the country, you become keenly aware our government has been providing nothing but discriminatory policy for the past 150 years. It is unfortunate that our municipality feels its hands are tied being a corporation. Coercion of its employees is not the way to go, and I believe it is illegal, and I hope it will be dealt with sooner than later by the courts. If the municipality moves in this direction, it will be up to the 25% of the unvaccinated and those vaccinated that have serious concerns about what's going on. And do not believe that these mandates and threats, and I believe these are threats to individual livelihoods, to organize and hold the municipality accountable. Whether you're vaccinated or not, everyone will get COVID or one of its variants at some point in their life. As the WHO has indicated, COVID may never go away and may become just another endemic virus in our community. When looking at the numbers I had presented earlier, covering the last 21 months, we should start moving to an endemic situation and end the pandemic and these discriminatory mandates. In my opinion, the pandemic has been used as a political tool to blatantly discriminate and suppress the people's rights and freedoms. Since the powers that be cannot control the virus, which will always do what it wants, they have instead decided to control the people. And it seems that they are ratcheting up the suppression tactics every 6 months or so. And I do not care, and they do not care that, in my opinion, that they've ripped up our Constitution and our Human Rights Act. It is unfortunate that the municipalities have not gotten together and launched a class action lawsuit against other levels of government for making them pass discriminatory, in my opinion, discriminatory bylaws or legislation. The Ontario government is looking at changing the definition of fully vaccinated. So all of the people who I have talked to, and it's hundreds who are considering not getting the booster shot, will now have, if that is changed, will now have their jobs threatened as well. We just went through that with multiple agencies and other companies in this town. If you think that bringing these mandates down on the unvaccinated to force them to comply is going to work, I do not think you know these people's resolve. It's been 21 months. They haven't done it yet. The only reason vaccination numbers have gone up recently, as I just explained, is because those people have had their jobs threatened. If you don't get the vaccine, you will not have a job. You should also be aware that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Why should those threaten, again, that's my opinion, that's what this is, or those who remain unvaccinated continue to support the municipality financially when you continually deny access to public services and use coercive discriminatory measures to make employees comply or lose the ability to support their families. It's unconscionable. Also, how much have we spent on training of employees that will be let go? How much will it cost to retain new employees, if we can find any? 2 more points. So when the citizens are finally sick and tired of this never-ending degradation of our rights and freedoms based on the rates that I've given you, you can get a hold of me and I will stand with you and I will fight this. I don't care what the government says, this has to end. The government is not the solution. We, the people, are the solution. And the government will not give you back your normal. We have to take it back. Until a portion of society does this, they will continue moving forward with more discriminatory measures, on your fellow citizens. And at some point down the road, all your options will be gone. To the vaccinated and the unvaccinated citizens, if you're fed up with this, start calling the municipality to complain. Start calling your MPP, start calling your MP, start organizing, plan a march, plan get-togethers with like-minded people and discuss what's going on either side, on both sides. I believe that people, if they just choose, they should, and they want to get the vaccine, to get the vaccine. If they do not, they shouldn't have to. Just start something to the citizens of Sioux Lookout and the citizens of the Northwest Health Unit. Just go out and start something. You have a right to have your voice and frustrations heard. Tonight, each councillor gets a chance to do what I believe is the morally correct thing and to vote no on this. And that's what I'll be voting. Thank you for allowing me this extra time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Lego. I will go around the table. Councillor Fenn.
I agree. I don't agree with him. I agree that with vaccines, the government is looking after the population that want to get vaccinated, and those that don't want to get vaccinated, well, they don't have to. So that's my decision.
Thank you. Councillor Howie.
I agree in the lines of Councillor Fenton. I think vaccines do protect the public. I think it's great. I think we are in this policy accommodating for individuals with medical reasons and accommodating them with testing. And for those that choose not to be vaccinated, we also have stipulated that they can continue to get regular testing, but at their expense, obviously. I was just hoping for the purposes of this present policy, given the definition of someone being fully vaccinated, we could amend the policy to include at least 2 doses under the fully vaccinated definition in line with the provincial guidelines and guiding documents that we have. Additionally, I was going to suggest the amendment to the testing frequency, given the recent development of the new variant and its predominance in certain health units and projected emergence as the dominant strain, to 72 hours between each antigen test, rapid antigen test. Additionally, I was going to suggest the amendment to the educational program to include infection prevention and control training, in addition to the importance of the use of PPE, including the proper donning and doffing of personal protective equipment. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm hoping the CAO or clerk made notes on the 3 or 4 points that were to be proposed amendments, I think. Did you have your hand up, CAO?
Yes, just very briefly on the last one, we can refer, we already have a policy on proper donning and doffing of PPE equipment, so we could refer to that in this policy if council wishes that amendment.
All right, Councillor Howie. That's the way it'll be. We'll when we get to the end, that'll be summarized as amendments and see how it goes with council. I'll keep going around. Councillor Timpson.
Yes. I think none of us are scientists around here that we can respond to Councillor Lego's presentation, the scientific side. But I do know that prevention is very difficult to say how prevention works. But I think that if we looked at the deaths that occurred early in the pandemic, it's far greater than what the statistics that were cited. I believe very strongly that the lockdowns that we endured earlier have kept our death rate to a minimum. It's still far higher. So prevention, it's very hard to say that it was a result of some action, but I think if we compare ourselves to the countries that were very devastated by this early, Italy, etc., we can, I believe the lockdowns have prevented, and we were given good guidance by our experts that we employ. I accept that the best way to deal with the pandemic now is mass vaccination. And I'm not saying that's compulsory. I'm saying that if everybody were vaccinated, we could beat this thing. There are, and we have to keep in mind that this technology has been in the works for 20, 30 years. It's not a brand new vaccine. And the treatments are coming. Pfizer has announced that they are looking at treatments. So it is happening. I do think that we need to go this route partially, because particularly with the new variants that continue to arise. I do have a few concerns about the policy, and that I don't know how a municipality can require council members or volunteers to be vaccinated. For one thing, although we are on the payroll, we are not elected. We are elected by the people. We are not hired by the municipality. The municipality can't fire us. We can be removed from office if we break a law, if we by a judge or integrity commissioner, but we can't. And it certainly would be a different scenario if we were meeting in person, which we aren't. We are meeting virtually still. Technically, a person who is not vaccinated could be not permitted to come to an in-person meeting. But I don't see the necessity as long as we are meeting virtually. And the same with the volunteers on our committees. The other thing, in terms of the mandatory education, it's sort of it's not clear there if people like who needs to get this mandatory education. Why would a person who is exempted medically need the mandatory education? And those people who don't want the vaccine, how, and if they're suspended from their job, when are they supposed to get this mandatory education? But having said that, mandatory education will not work. I think it's useful to offer it to people, but not to force it. It's just because it just doesn't work. So I'm prepared to support a good portion of this policy, because I believe it's about public protection of the public, and there is conditions in our Charter of Rights that our rights are limited when it comes to the protection of others. And I think we have to look at this, that this is about the protection of others. I think it's a way in which we can get back to semi-normal by people having to be vaccinated, and those who choose not to, that's their choice. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
Yes, thank you. I did not run to for council to get into the business of determining what people do with their bodies. This is a decision that needs to be determined by individuals in consultation with their healthcare professionals and is subject to informed consent. We have health units and other bodies that are responsible for this. If this was so critical, why didn't the provincial government implement vaccinations for employees at the buildings where they mandated vaccines for those to enter, i.e. the rec center? The province has laid out the roadmap for recovery, which states vaccine mandates and masks is planned to be lifted on March 28th. I understand this can change, but this is the information from the province. Essentially, this policy could mandate vaccines for 2.5 months, January 15th to March 28th. I find this to be illogical, considering the potential issues this policy could generate through legal challenges. Many unions are challenging vaccine mandates, including QP in other locals. Coercion is compelling a party to act in an involuntary manner by the use of threats. It involves a set of various types of forceful actions that violate free will and of an individual to induce a desired response. Such actions are used as leverage to force someone to act in a way contrary to their own interests. This policy is coercion at its most fundamental level. You need to receive medical treatment or you will lose your job or have to pay money for tests and report on a self-administered health test in order to stay employed. There is no end date on this policy. Treatment is defined in the Ontario Healthcare Act 1996 as follows, and it means anything that is done for a therapeutic, preventative, palliative, diagnostic, cosmetic, or other health-related purpose, and includes a course treatment, plan for treatment, or community treatment plan. This definition would include any vaccination or any COVID-19 test, as they are both allegedly preventive and diagnostic and for health-related purposes. The Ontario Healthcare Consent Act defines consent as well. Consent to treatment. No treatment without consent. Informed consent means a person who will administer the medical treatment or procedure needs to inform you of all the benefits and risks associated with medical treatment or procedures, as well as alternative treatments before you decide you will consent or not. Elements of consent include your expressed, informed, and explicit consent, which is voluntary and must be obtained prior to treatment. Without consent, it is considered assault under the Criminal Code of Canada. Consent given under fear or duress is not consent. Section 265, subsection 3 of the Criminal Code of Canada defines consent in relation to assault as consent for the purpose of this section, no consent is obtained where the complainant submits or does not resist by the reason of, and one of the options listed is the exercise of authority. The Nuremberg Code, which Canada is a signatory, states that it is essential before performing a medical procedure on human beings that there is voluntary informed consent. It also confirms a person involved should have the legal capacity to give consent without the intervention of any element of force, fraud, deceit, duress, overreaching, or other ulterior form of constraint or coercion, and should have sufficient knowledge and comprehension of the elements of the subject matter involved to enable him and her to make an informed decision. The Nuremberg Code, Article 6, Section 1, any preventative, diagnostic, therapeutic, medical intervention is only to be carried out with the prior, free, and informed consent of the person concerned, based on adequate information. The consent should, where appropriate, be expressed and may be withdrawn by the person concerned at any time and for any reason without disadvantage or prejudice. The Nuremberg Code, Article 6, Section 3 reads, in no case should a collective community agreement or consent of a community leader or other authority substitute for an individual's informed consent. By forcing staff to submit to a COVID-19 vaccination or test, including rapid antigen test, we will be in breach of the Nuremberg Code. Further, the Supreme Court of Canada has well-established case law that deals with medical treatment without informed consent of the patient. Case law, to some in the legal field, would be regarded as the most recent gold standard type of law. Case law cannot be overturned or overruled without new case law on the issue. The Supreme Court of Canada had made it clear that it is unconstitutional to force medical treatment of any kind without the informed consent of the patient. Any action taken in contravention of case law would be unlawful. Lastly, as indicated by Public Health Ontario numerous times, as evidenced in our ICU statistics, vaccinated persons can still get and transmit COVID-19 despite inoculation. Between October 15th and the 28th, there were approximately 4,100 COVID cases, and of that, 37% were fully vaccinated. With this scientific evidence, If you target only the non-disclosed, unvaccinated, or accommodated persons under the Human Rights Code of COVID-19 testing, this is grounds for discrimination. This policy runs the risk of pushing qualified, loyal staff out the door for not receiving a vaccine that they have been working without during this pandemic. In response to allow reasonable mitigation of risk to have staff return to work, the municipality has implemented policy and rolled out PPE to staff to allow them to return to work in a safe manner. These policies and PPE are reasonable and have been in place for months, and they have been working. I do not see justification or any data to support pushing this policy to the next level and compelling staff to undergo a medical procedure. This is not my area of expertise, nor is it any of the councillors sitting at this table. To top it all off, the provincial government has just indicated that sporting events will be moving to 50% capacity. These are events that only admit fully vaccinated people. We're still moving backwards. If council intends to pursue this, would council also support a diet and exercise plan for staff? According to the CDC, obesity worsens the effects of COVID. Being obese may triple your risk of hospitalization with COVID. Lord knows I should do this. Shedding a couple pounds wouldn't hurt me, but I'm guessing this wouldn't be entertained as it goes a bit too far. I have significant concerns over allowing this to apply to elected officials and committees and boards. As it stands, this could prevent 20% of the population, the unvaccinated, from being on council. And I believe this would be undemocratic by dictating who can be on council based on a medical procedure, and that runs the risk of another legal battle. I would like to state, while I do not support this policy, I am not against vaccination. I believe people should have a dialogue with their doctors, look at legitimate research, and make their decision. I believe council's role is to promote, encourage, and educate the benefits of vaccination. I draw the line at coercion and mandates, especially in order for people to keep their jobs. This pandemic in general is a moving target. It is difficult to make a decision that is perfect. Policies of compulsion require a lot of squeezing for not much juice, and they may harm employee relations. Follow-up, my questions for staff. What data related to our local COVID situation has been used to justify proceeding with this policy? From what I can tell in the epidemiology reports, there's been 1,272 cases in our health unit, which averages 2 a day since March 2020. I can understand how this makes sense in denser areas, but it seems like a drop in the bucket for the amount of issues that could come of this, and considering that we are seeing approximately anywhere from 1/3 of the cases fully vaccinated individuals.
Councilor Cassidy, is that you complete?
I got a few more questions. So
okay, sorry. Yeah, there was a pause. I'm sorry.
I wasn't sure if staff can answer or not, but I can
ask
the rest of them.
Sure.
Do we know? So I'll just ask the rest, Mayor Lawrence. What is the position of the unions on this matter? I have seen instances of the QP locals filing grievances over this mandate. Will this create an administrative burden that can lead to animosity with staff? What number of staff could we potentially lose? Do we have any estimates of what percentage of staff this policy will apply to, mainly the unvaccinated? And if the loss of what the loss of resources will be with them walking out the door? What is the municipality's exposure if someone gets the vaccine in order to keep their job, but has an adverse reaction or experiences complications? We are seeing the efficacy of the vaccine range around 6 months. Are we going to require boosters next? There are countries talking of 4 shots. Where does this end? Thank you.
So I think I'll go to staff after we've been around the table once, and then we'll try and summarize some of the questions that have been asked. So I think we have Councillor Bath left.
Yes. So listening to everybody, it's pretty interesting. One of the things that comes across to me is when we live in society, we have a lot of our rights, our personal rights are infringed on. And it's for the protection of others, and that's something that we normally all agree with. We don't smoke in public anymore because we know that harms people. We drive with seatbelts. We know if we fly out of the car and we lose control, that harms people. So we've been ruled to do those, and we comply. And in my mind, the vaccination policy is a policy to protect others and to protect our society. I was very receptive to Councillor Howie's comments. I believe that he hit a couple in the nose that sort of softened the policy a little bit. And I think they dealt with a lot of the things that might go that may make it more acceptable. So I'm in favor of the policy. I'd like to see it refined a little bit. And I like I say, I like Councillor Howie's comments. And that's really all I've got to say. I'm not going to pretend I know the numbers that Councillor Lego knows, and I certainly don't. I know my rights have been infringed on sometimes, and they probably will again. Every one of us will. So something that's just what's going to happen.
Thanks, Councillor Bath. Yeah, I think good discussion. There's obviously some passion here, well stated by everybody. I'm still a believer in government. I do believe in government. I agree with what the various governments that I'm subject to do all the time. No, I don't. But I believe in the process. I believe in the democracy we have and the process that we have. I believe in expertise. Expertise is not dead. I believe in the value of experts and in the value of experts that are used by government on our behalf. And I believe in the common good. And sometimes we need to sacrifice for the common good. So I'm in favor of the vaccines and in general of this policy, but I think there are some things that have been raised that we need to look at in a bit more detail with staff. I also, in terms of, I haven't done a lot of research, but been to a few conferences and seen a few presentations and read there have been appeals that have gone to the Supreme Court. And in every case, the Supreme Court has denied the appeal of the people protesting the vaccine, whether it be whoever it be. The Ontario Rights Commission, the Ontario Human Rights Commission has ruled on this and found that the province and others are within the scope of their to do this. It's not violating human rights. Those are just general comments, but staff, CAO, one comment, a question from, I think Councillor Lego, did the province tell us to do this?
The province did not, through you, Mayor Lawrence, the province did not tell us to do this. This policy came forward by municipal staff with reference to encouragement from the province to implement policies and also our Northwest Health Unit. And in speaking to some of my colleagues in other municipalities throughout Ontario, there are a large number of them that are moving towards putting in mandatory vaccination policies. Dryden just approved one just this past Monday, and Marathon as well. I think that one was done last month. So municipalities are slowly coming on, well, I shouldn't say coming on board, but slowly passing policies, mandatory vaccination policies for their municipal staff, and some have approved it for council members as well.
Another question was accommodations for the unvaccinated councillors and committee members. How do they maintain their voice, or do they have a voice?
Sorry, that question was with reference to Councillor Timpson's.
No, well, it might have been, I noted it down from Councillor Lego. Councillor Timpson, I think, reiterated that question as well, I think.
So could you repeat the question again, please?
It was accommodations for the unvaccinated among council or committee members. Do they lose their voice? Are there accommodations? How do they maintain a voice?
The intent is if council wants to extend it to council members and committee members as well, and volunteers, that they would be subject to the same options as staff would be.
Right. And I think Councillor Timpson said while we're meeting virtually, it doesn't come into play. So I'm just going to ask a question. How do we have any idea how long is this policy open-ended, or is it is there something that the province will do, or that will change this?
It depends. Everything is fluid with the pandemic. Things change daily. They change weekly. So this policy may have to be changed again if approved by council, or at some point we may deem it that it's no longer necessary. That's a very difficult question to answer at this point.
Right, but we could deem it no longer necessary if it came to that. Yep. And then the other points I noted were the Human Rights Act and the Supreme Court or judicial. Do you have any comments there?
Yes. So recently, the Human Rights Tribunal put out a communication, and if council will indulge me, it's not that long. It says upholding individual human rights while trying to collectively protect the general public has been a challenge throughout the pandemic. Organizations must attempt to balance the rights of people who have not been vaccinated due to a code protected ground such as disability while ensuring individual and collective rights to health and safety. The duty to accommodate for medical reasons. Some people are not able to receive the COVID-19 vaccine for medical or disability related reasons. Under the code, organizations have a duty to accommodate them unless it would specifically interfere with the people's health and safety. Organizations might also put COVID testing in place as an alternative to mandatory vaccinations as an option for accommodating people who are unable to receive a vaccine for medical reasons. Organizations should cover the cost of COVID-19 testing as part of the duty to accommodate those with the inability to receive a vaccine for medical reasons. Under human rights, again, personal preferences for singular beliefs are not protected. Receiving a COVID-19 vaccine is voluntary. At the same time, the Ontario Human Rights Code's position is that a person who chooses not to be vaccinated based on a personal preference does not have the right to accommodation under the code. The OHRC, which is the Ontario Human Rights Code, is not aware of any tribunal or court decision that found a singular belief against vaccinations or masks amounted to a creed within the meaning of the code. And they also quoted Sharma versus the City of Toronto in 2020, as they filed a complaint of the Human Rights Code, and it was the Human Rights Tribunal upholded what the City of Toronto put into place. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. There was a question, and I'm sorry, I'm not sure, this may have been Councillor Cassidy. Can council require councillors to be vaccinated? Is it within our authority?
I believe so, yes. It's being done elsewhere and it hasn't been challenged. It could be challenged, but to my knowledge, it has not been challenged yet. So that would remain if somebody wanted to challenge it, we would have to see in court whether or not it would be upheld.
Another question was, did you use any local data? What local data was used to justify this policy?
If Councillor Cassidy would indulge me to repeat his questions, I wrote them down, but I couldn't quite catch up.
Yeah, not a problem. It said, what data related to local COVID-19 situation was used to justify proceeding with this policy? From what I've seen, sorry. No, I just was going to comment that the total cases in the health unit is that I saw on the epidemiology report was about 1,272, which averages to about 2 cases a day since March 2020.
So again, I'm not the expert, but our responsibility as a municipality is to protect the health and safety of our municipal employees. And in doing so and following the provincial legislation, we've done that so far in all of our policies and the guidelines that are put out by the health unit. And since the onset of the pandemic, that's what staff have been doing, is trying our best to adhere to all of the regulations, the legislation that's put out by the province, as well as best practices and guidelines that have been put forward by the health unit. And also looking at other municipalities, what they're doing as well. And so we felt the time was now to, especially with the emergence of the Omicron variant and our cases rising, that we have an obligation to further protect our staff and the public.
Councillor Lego, Councillor Cassidy, sorry, next question.
So with cases rising, a lot of the cases have been down south, not locally here, although there was a small jump today, I believe 10 or 11.
We're at, I think this morning we're at 37 cases in the health unit.
Okay, maybe that was yesterday's number. But the new cases, sorry, maybe that differs as opposed to active cases.
Yeah, in 11 new cases today, went from 25 yesterday to 37
Yeah,
today.
that's the number I was quoting, yes. So the question is, were our staff reasonably safe for the past few months based on the policies that we had implemented? Did we feel our staff were reasonably safe?
I would say yes, because nothing happened, but it doesn't mean that nothing can't happen. We recently had a scare at in one of our departments where we had to have testing done, repeated testing done for our municipal staff because they were exposed. So that is a grave concern to me as the CAO of the municipality. So in that sense, just because it didn't happen doesn't mean it won't happen.
Councilor Lego, you had I know I've noted down some other questions. You did state the position of unions. Was that you had a question around the position of unions?
That was me, yes. Yeah, so I was just curious what the position of our union was on this matter. I have seen instances where there are other unions, QP unions, other locals that are filing grievances on this matter. So my question is have we had dialogue with our union over this, and what's their position on it? And how will that affect potential labor relations with their union going forward?
To you, Mayor Lawrence. So to the first question, there already has been case law where, and it has gone to court, but then the judge has indicated that because there are collective agreements in place, that they had to go through the grievance and arbitration process, and that has been done. And to my knowledge, the cases that I have seen, they have not been successful from the perspective of the union challenging it in arbitration. As far as reaching out to our local, I did reach out twice and did not receive a response. I wanted to know if one was in a personal meeting. I asked them what their position was if we were to implement a policy, and they said they would get back to me. And then I reached out again in an email approximately 2 weeks ago to follow up, and I did not receive a response.
So I did watch, actually watched another council's meeting about this from Norfolk County, where they rejected mandate vaccines for their staff. That was an issue, and that was something similar situation that was responded to by QP. They did reach out and ask, and there was no response. That council voted down vaccine mandates. I actually reached out a councillor down there as well, and I asked about negative recourse or anything like that, and there was none that came back at them. There's been no negative pushback or feedback with regards to that policy. They left it up to the individuals to make the decision for themselves. I think that is where this should lie. I understand with regards to the scare that we did have, and I understand that is there. We also had instances where there's potential exposure at my place of employment earlier this year as well. It is something that, since we know that people that are vaccinated can still transmit the disease, mind you, it is not the level. It is something that I don't think is going to go away by implementing this policy.
I saw Councillor Timpson's hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna comment on the fact that we haven't had the severity of the pandemic yet here. We only have to look at the Kingston, Ontario, which was, they had such a low incidence of the rate of the virus a year ago, and they were accepting patients from Toronto into their ICUs. However, Kingston has now surged, and I think they're looking at 1,000 cases a day, and they are looking at having to send their patients out to the ICUs in other municipalities. So it's like saying we don't need a stop sign at that corner over there because there's never been an accident there, and yet everybody knows that it's dangerous. Don't wait for it to get to the point where we're having to send our patients out to Vancouver which could happen. I mean, it's been happening. So it's not just the deaths. It's also that people are going to get sick and they're going to be plugging up the hospitals. Surgeries, elective surgeries and essential surgeries are going to be deferred. So it's not just deaths from the COVID, it's other, it's the collateral damage that we're experiencing. I think that I think we do need to have a really aggressive policy. I think it'd be worthwhile looking at whether or not if somebody is really anti-vaccination, okay, can they live with the regular testing? I mean, if you had tuberculosis, you wouldn't be allowed to go into into work. You'd have to be tested. They used to require that you get tested for venereal disease before you could get a marriage license. I mean, this is not new stuff. So, I mean, I think that's worth looking into, the mandatory testing. I don't see that as a violation of anybody's rights. Yes, it'll cost money, but it's going to cost us a lot more if this spreads in Sioux Lookout. I'd like to see the education offered to everybody in the municipality, not just and that it be part of an in-service training. Mandatory in that, okay, this day this is what we're having, not that they have to pay for it or that they have to do it in their own time, but make it part of the regular municipal workday. So I think that there does need, and also I think that we should not be requiring counselors and volunteers to be vaccinated while we're still operating virtually. It just doesn't seem very practical. So I can support part of that with the policy, but with some amendments.
Councillor Cassidy.
Yes, Councillor Timpson, with all due respect, people can still run stop signs. People can think for themselves if they're approaching a corner and they can slow down and stop. There is other alternatives. People can think for themselves. They can make the choice to get vaccinated and they can do that. And they don't need someone to tell them or force them to do it.
It's about protecting other people. That's what it's about. It's not about protecting the vaccinated, it's about protecting others.
Councillor Cassidy.
The disease can still spread in fully vaccinated people, albeit it is less. And the benefit, or the main benefit of the vaccine, from what I understand, is that it reduces the symptoms that you get and the severity of the symptoms for yourself. That is what I understand. That is people making that choice.
All right. So, CAO, do you have anything that you? I would just. Can I'd like to say something here about the. I believe if we're requiring staff to do it, I think we should require ourselves to do it. But I also think that we are meeting virtually. So the requirement is for staff to show up at work. They have to show proof of vaccination. We're requiring council to be vaccinated. But if we're meeting virtually, you don't have to get vaccinated until such time as we're meeting in person, would be my take. I don't think anybody's going to force it. They're just going to look when you come back to meeting in public, and we're going to need vaccinations. And I hope we can continue meeting virtually until such time as this is over, and then we don't lose any voices at the table, because all the voices are valuable. CAO.
I don't have a lot to add other to what the discussion, other than Councillor Howie has brought up some amendments that he'd like to see in the policy, as well as Councillor Councillor Timpson.
And do you have how do we proceed with that, with this motion that's on the table?
If I'd like council to weigh in on those amendments first, and then if those amendments are to be made, we can change the policy and put them in, and then council will vote as to whether or not the policy will be approved.
Okay, so do you have them written down? Or does the clerk? The
I
clerk is nodding his head, the clerk does, so clerk, but how many are there? 7 or so?
I only know of 4.
Clerk, are you talking or?
Sorry, Mayor Lawrence, just collecting my papers.
Okay.
So the proposed amendments,
How many are there, clerk?
well, there's a number from a number of members, so
Right.
I will have to do it by member
Okay.
as opposed to a grand total.
No, okay, so I'm just, what I'm trying to get at is how you're going to read one out and we're going to do a straw poll to include it or not?
Yes.
That's all I was just trying to get an idea of, is it 5 or is it 15 or how
Yeah,
long?
there's
is it?
about 5 or 6,
Okay.
I believe, altogether.
Okay, so we'll do this by straw poll. You'll do one at a time.
Okay. Oh, my apologies.
Do you want, clerk, should we, it's 7:10, we've been at it for, should we take a 5-minute break and then come back? That would be helpful? Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mayor Lawrence, yes.
So let's take a 5-minute break and come back, council. Go ahead, clerk.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence. So the proposed amendments to the policy, and forgive me if I don't have them all. I'm feeling a little under the weather myself this evening. The first amendment would be to define fully vaccinated as having required or having obtained 2 doses plus the 14-day period.
And the difference, sorry, the changes from having had the booster?
Yeah. So my understanding is 2 doses would be the requirement to be considered fully vaccinated, plus 2 doses plus 14 days since the second dose.
And sorry, the policy currently says, refresh me, help me.
It just doesn't specify what fully vaccinated is.
I see. I understood. Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, no, what if that definition of fully vaccinated from the province changes? Should we not just say fully vaccinated as determined by the province?
That's not a bad
Public
suggestion.
health guideline?
Yep, I think that's a good suggestion. I'm not sure who proposed this. Was that Councillor Howie?
This was Councillor Howie, yes.
What do you think of that, putting that to a straw poll as defined by the province, Councillor Howie?
Yeah, I definitely like that idea because I believe that allows the flexibility for it to change in the future.
So would everybody support that amendment to the policy to be fully vaccinated as defined by the province? I'm just looking for head nods here, or head shakes, or thumbs up, thumbs down. It's going to be a negative one there, but I see. Let's do thumbs up. Okay, that's good. Well, that amendment would carry.
Thank you, Mayor Lawrence. Through you, the second amendment or proposed amendment, my apologies, would it also comes from Councillor Howie. The suggestion is that the frequency of antigen testing be accelerated from once every 7 days to once every 72 hours.
Comments, Council? It's accelerated from once every 7 days, right? Okay.
7 days right now, yes.
So, boy, it seems that's quite a change. At whose cost?
If the employee is exempt for medical reasons, it would be at the cost of the municipality. If the employee simply, if the employee chooses not to be vaccinated, it would be at the employee's cost, according to the current wording of the policy.
I thought can the employee choose not to be vaccinated without medical cause and be at work?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, that is contemplated in the current policy. It's, I believe, option 4 of the 5.
Okay, so it would be at the cost of the one without cause, but the one with medical, proven medical cause, it would be at the municipal cost.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion, Council? Councillor Cassidy?
If you're gonna do it, why doesn't it go to 5 days? That way, at least it's once the beginning of the week, and then it lasts for the week, and they have to buy 1 test.
That's not a bad idea. Councillor Timpson?
I think we have to listen to the experts here and how this Omicron variant is like exploding. And let's hope it isn't, but I think we have to err on the side of caution.
Anybody else? So let's do it this way. Councillor Howe, I hope you'll accept this. I'm going to propose Councillor Cassidy's every 5 days, which would cover 1 work week. And they wouldn't have to do it until I'm taking it to Sunday or Monday morning, and then it could cover the work week as the first straw poll, and then we'll move down to the 72 hours. So every 5 days. That's not going to work. Let's try every 72 hours. If 5 days doesn't work, then I'll go for 72 hours. That's carried then. 72 hours as you called out, Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Lawrence. The other proposed amendment from Councillor Howie was respecting the education program. He had suggested that infection control measures be included in the program, along with awareness about the vaccination. Our CAO did respond to that comment or recommendation, sorry, suggesting or advising that we do have a number of other COVID policies, which are mandatory policies, which all staff are required to take, and infection control measures are contemplated in those other policies. So I believe the CAO's suggestion was that those other policies be relied on for that type of education.
So Councillor Howie.
I just wanted to add in there, just for one statement, the comments of Councillor Timpson as well, for this to be included in work time and for all staff.
CAO.
Just for clarification, Councillor Howie, when you were speaking earlier, you indicated something about donning, like infection prevention, for example, donning and doffing procedures within the policy. So we're referring to, so we'll just make reference in this policy with reference to our other ones with respect to that. And then when you're referring to education, as per what Councillor Timpson mentioned, you're asking for an amendment to the education piece under the options to be for all staff, period, whether they're vaccinated or not. Correct? Okay.
So is this, we're clear on this one? Good. Any discussion? How many would support this amendment? Okay, let's move on to the next one, Clerk. That's carried.
Thank you, Mayor Lawrence. That actually was them all, because we did address the next one, which was going to be who the education is offered to and how. So that's been addressed in this one just now.
So can you tell me how this would impact the motion that's on the floor?
To you, Mayor Lawrence, similar to the previous item that was passed this evening that directed that some changes be incorporated, it would be the same idea, that the changes as are discussed this evening would be incorporated into the policy. The bylaw can still be passed this evening with the understanding that the direction to staff is to incorporate those changes before the policy is before the bylaw is signed and made official.
And the process we just went through can be considered direction to staff.
Correct.
And nothing needs to be added to the motion that I read.
Yeah, that's correct, Mayor Lawrence. Now, the only other items that are outstanding is, pardon me, staff was seeking council's direction on whether or not the policy would apply to members of council and members of boards and committees and commissions.
Okay, thank you. Before I get to that, I see Councillor Lega had his hand up.
Well, I just like to recommend when we're ready to vote that it be a recorded vote, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
So is this, sorry, how does this, is this an amendment or how is this working, Clerk?
To you, Mayor Lawrence, if the direction from council is that presently members of council and committee members are not included in the policy, and so if the direction from council is that they be included, those would be amendments that would be added to the policy, similar to the other ones that were just approved.
So we don't need to reword the motion that's on the table based through these amendments. So do we need to take these? We can just take this as one that it includes the council and council members and council boards, commissions, and committees. Or do you want to do them separately?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I'll leave that to your discretion.
Okay. Well, let's try doing it all as one.
Your worship, Councillor Howie has his hand up.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna get to I'm just going to the table before I do that. Absolutely. I was just going to call for discussion on this. Thanks. I'll start with Councillor Howie.
I was just going to ask for clarification. So this policy applies to staff as presented. We're proposing the application to members of boards, commissions, and committees, members of council. But in addition to that, it also applies to contractors that are contracted for service from the municipality as well. Yeah, okay, the clerk is nodding. So I fully support this policy applying to members of staff. I also support it applying to members of council, boards, commissions, and committees, as we are required to be in line with other policies in the municipality. It just makes sense for us to be in line with this one as well.
All right, so and specifically comments on this application, council comments, Councillor Timpson.
Well, I wouldn't support mandatory or the policy applying to council and committee while we are meeting virtually. It doesn't make sense. And that until which time we are meeting in person, at which time I think it could be at that point revisited. And that will depend on what the broader situation is out there with the pandemic and what the provincial laws are. But I just don't see it as making any sense right now.
Thank you. I guess for me, the sense it makes is that we're applying the same rules to council and council committees as we are to staff. If we're asking staff to do it, we ask council to do it. Council has the luxury of meeting virtually right now, and luxury, whatever, however you want to put it, and that can go on, I suppose, indefinitely. But that's, to me, that's, if we're asking staff to do it, then we're also asking ourselves to do it. It's just, the fact is, for various reasons, we're not meeting in person. Now, I understand what you mean. Doesn't make any sense to do it, but that's why I kind of make sense of it. Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, well, the policy says you have to be tested every 72 hours. Well,
to come to the workplace, right? If you're coming into the workplace.
Yeah, but and that it just doesn't. And there has to be a consequence. What's the consequence if a councillor doesn't comply? Council can't fire a council member. No, and the CIO can't fire a council member. I mean, it doesn't seem to be any point in having a policy like this when there's it just doesn't stand up in law, really, when it comes to elected officials. It just doesn't make any sense, because there's no repercussions. If you have a policy it's not followed, there has to be a repercussion, but there's no way for repercussions against an
Right.
elected official.
I guess the repercussion would be if we did choose to start meeting in person, then those members would be excluded. I don't want to see it come to that. I'd rather that we meet virtually until such time as these rules are no longer required. But council comments, Councilor Nickel.
Yeah, when this passes, will accommodations be made for mail that's in the municipal office for councillors that are not vaccinated and that won't be able to enter the building? So if we call ahead and have it mailed to us personally, just a consideration and accommodation.
CIO, excuse me, is my video gone wonky? Or is it just what it's appearing on my? Okay, I've slipped off to the right and my head is blown up 3 times its normal size. I don't know what's going on here. Okay, I'm glad that's not the case. CIO.
Accommodations can be made here, Councillor Lego.
Further discussion, Councillor Bath.
Yeah, my concern is the double standard. Certainly, I agree. When we're in virtual meetings, it doesn't affect anybody. But it's really setting a double standard. Should we be then saying that we should put as many staff as possible in a virtual environment to do their jobs? And I'm concerned that's what we're going to be saying. I assume if I was a union or staff person, I would be saying I want to work from home because I don't want to be vaccinated. And obviously that's not going to work. The greater operators got to go to work. So I'm concerned if we don't do the same, we're setting a double standard that's really jeopardizing where we are and who we are. In the main policy, the one thing we never really talked about, and I think I may be jumping off topic here for a second, but I'd like to really look hard at the termination clause in there. Certainly off without pay, I have no problem with that. The termination thing, I believe that's excessive. I'll leave that for now.
CIO.
I didn't have my hand up, Your Worship.
Oh, no, okay. I was wondering about if you had a comment on the termination clause.
At some point, we can't leave a person's job open for them to be off without pay. So that's why the termination clause is in there. It certainly is not our intent to be heavy-handed with our staff, recognizing that a lot of them have made significant, well, a lot of them, all of our staff, sorry, have made significant contributions to the municipality in the various departments they work in. That's not the intent, but at the same time, we can't just leave the job unfilled for any length of time, depending on what the job is.
Thanks. And so the item we're discussing now is whether to include councillors and other members. I see your clerk, your hand is up.
Through Mayor Lawrence, thank you. One suggestion I could make, similar to how we adjusted the other part of the policy to say that fully vaccinated will be in accordance with the provincial definition. Perhaps to find some common ground among members, we could say that members and members of council and members of boards, commissions, and committees would need to either be vaccinated or subject to the testing if and when they're attending municipal facilities for meetings or business or something to that effect.
Sure, that sounds real. Councillor Howie.
I was going to ask a question in some effect to that, but also in line for those councillors that attend meetings elsewhere or attend events elsewhere in representation of the municipality in their role as a councillor for the municipality. So we've already addressed the entering a municipal facility. You'll need to be in line with this policy, attending a meeting in person. But right now, under emergency circumstances in our procedure, this is why a virtual meeting is permitted, or a special council meeting is permitted virtually. Normal meetings, not under an emergency measure, are not permitted to be virtual presently. So my question is, where in the policy it will contend with council members, because I do support council members being required to adhere to this policy. But for those circumstances where we're representing the municipality, say at a conference, at NOMA, or when we're attending in our capacity, I believe that also adheres, because that would be potentially, as definition, our workplace. So
I'm not sure. I'm thinking that's more in the receiving bodies, bailiwick, what they require and don't require. So to speak, if it's NOMA, what is their policy, or if it's whoever it is. I think it would be wherever you're going will have a policy, and that would be the controlling factor, I think. Councillor Howie? Sorry, I'm saying that Dryden isn't telling us what our policy should be, and neither is NOMA, and we shouldn't be telling them what their policy is. We have our policy for our workplace and our settings. Is that?
yes, but my question, I guess, would be to staff. If we say we as a group of council went fishing down by the shore as a retreat, a sanctioned municipal event, I fell and I broke my arm. That's a workplace injury. Just as our fire department responds to events and someone gets injured, that's a workplace injury. A workplace is not concrete. It's where the work is actually occurring. So it can be fluid in some respect.
But I'm not sure if we have a policy that councillors need to be, oh, I see, you're saying to enter the workplace. Where is the workplace? Is that what you're saying? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure this policy isn't going to cover everything, and it can be dynamic. The policies change. It can change on, I suppose, a monthly basis. CIO, did you want to respond to or react to Councillor Howie's comment?
Sure, through you, Mayor Lawrence. Councillor Howie has a very valid point. When councillors are away from the municipality and in speaking to a retreat or whatever, or that's where your workplace is. If you're acting on behalf of the municipality, then you are representing the municipality as a councillor at that point in time.
So can the policy indicate? Well, I don't know how to get it. What's the wording on this then to amend it? Clerk.
Through Mayor Lawrence, so what we would do in the policy, if this amendment is approved, when we define the various bodies that the policy applies to, when we talk about members of council or members of boards, commissions, and committees, it would be defined, their workplace would be defined in the policy as essentially being wherever they are conducting work of the municipality.
Okay, so I think that covers Councillor Howie's points. Thanks, Clerk. And it's taken as direction to staff in the fine detailing of the policy to make sure that's covered. Any further comments on whether or not to include councillors and boards, committees? Councillor Cassidy.
Just going to comment on that suggestion that essentially any meeting place we go to, those convention centers the vaccination status is overseen by the provincial mandates and with indoor meeting spaces. So I think it's kind of redundant to build it into our policies, but that's just my thoughts on it. But I think this is covered other legislation. But if council wants to have a discussion outdoors, is that an extent? Are we calling that a workplace and someone needs to be vaccinated to have a conversation outdoor or official meeting outside? That goes too far.
I guess, Councillor, I think it's maybe covering those situations that I think the conferences and whatever, I think you're absolutely right, but there may be other smaller meeting places or business where it might not be covered. Councillor Timpson.
Well, you may be meeting with a constituent over coffee, and maybe at that we have to include something in there that that counselors will adhere to, counselors who are not, well, all counselors will adhere to pandemic precautions, distancing, etc., wearing of masks in any carrying out of their duties. That could be meeting with somebody over coffee about, you know, a bylaw or something.
It may be redundant in many situations, but maybe it'll just cover those odd situations that so we're fully covered. I think that's the point. Any further, Councillor Cassidy?
So if I go down to Al Sports and have a conversation with Councillor Lego, will this policy put me in contravention of having a conversation with Councillor Lego? Yes.
Are you undertaking council business?
A discussion might occur over something. Yes. That would be considered council business.
I suppose you can help me, clerk. Can you?
Through Mayor Lawrence, again, it somewhat depends on the individual circumstances. So, you know, if the policy is going to be that it applies to council, and if there are members of council who are unvaccinated, and if they choose to meet with each other to discuss council business, then the policy would apply. So there's a few I guess tests that have to be met for that to apply.
I guess another test is who's going to police that.
Exactly.
So maybe you're right, Councillor Cassidy, but maybe it doesn't really matter. Councillor Timpson.
I mean, you could just put in there that council members will be expected to observe pandemic precautions in any carrying out of their duties, in the execution of any of their duties. So that, yeah, if you want to go for a beer with another council member and talk about the hockey game, that's one thing. But if you're wanting to talk with a constituent about a bylaw or something, we need to respect distance and masking and all that sort of thing. I think something like that does need to be in there, so that the double standard is less, you know, so there's not such a.
I get where people are coming from. I think, you know, obviously you can't stop councillors from talking together, talking to constituents and trying to police them. That's impossible. So, but I think what we can be doing is if you go to a conference where you're paid a per diem, then you can't. You have to act as a councillor and follow the council rules. And maybe that's as simple as it needs to be. It's too difficult to say when I'm talking to Corey or Connor or Joe that I have that it's we're in contravention. But obviously, if I'm sent to a convention by the municipality, then I am a municipal councillor and I have to apply it.
Yeah, I agree. I think the wording needs to be tight enough and loose enough. Tight enough to cover councillors traveling out of town and going places where they're clearly undertaking municipal business on behalf of council and the municipality, versus where they're going about their business and doing business on behalf of themselves, let's say, as a councillor, right? I think there needs to be both tightness and looseness to it, so that we're not creating situations which we can never police and don't want to. Councillor Howie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is important to mention that under this policy, for those that are vaccinated, you just need to provide your proof of vaccination. And for those that are unvaccinated, you just need to get a test. Like we all have to do the proposed amendment was to all do the education. So we're all doing the education. And you just need to either show your proof of vaccination or get a test. So if I want to go have coffee with Joyce, I'm vaccinated. I'm going to send my proof of vaccination in. Done. Right? Joyce might send her proof of vaccination in. We can meet. that's my short take.
Clerk, what's on the table right now for agreement, disagreement?
So right now, the council is being asked to make a decision on whether or not the policy will apply to members of council and members of boards, commissions, and committees. And if it does, to what workplaces does it apply? Those are sort of the two questions.
And do you have any wording yet for us on what workplaces it applies?
So what I have drafted is, at any municipal facility or anywhere they are working on behalf of it or carrying out business on behalf of the municipality. That may be too broad.
I like the broadness of that, frankly. Councillor Cassidy.
I still think that broadness can cover, if we're conducting business on behalf of the municipality, it's a loose term. And it's the fact is if we're going somewhere to a NOMA conference or somewhere else, if we're going there, Councillor Bath raised a good point about the per diem. If you're getting a per diem, then that's it. And the council or the place that you're going or the meeting location under the provincial guidelines stipulates that conferences and stuff are subject to vaccination. So it's redundant to build that into our policy because it's already mandated through government.
Sometimes I travel to Dryden to meet with, and I have, the last time I did this was a long time ago, but to meet with the MP in his office or over coffee, or occasionally I need to meet with the executive director of the KDSB in Dryden or somewhere in Kenora. So it's not necessarily at their workplace or whatever, right? I'm undertaking the business of the municipality as I'm the appointed representative to that agency. But it's not at a big conference or whatever. I understand what I like the broadness of it, Councillor Cassidy, because it allows some looseness, and it's not. I'm not sure. I'm not getting hung up on. Carry on. You had another comment.
No, I guess say that's fair enough, but the location that you are meeting in would stipulate the requirements for vaccination or otherwise there. So you would be subject to that if you were going to another office, if that was a requirement of the meeting space, if they asked that you were vaccinated, that's on them, that's on the meeting space. If it applies to municipal property, it should apply to municipal property, sorry, and it should apply to a municipal vehicle, or if there are councillors are traveling together and receiving a per diem, that would almost constitute a rental of that vehicle and it would almost be an extension of the workplace then. Otherwise, you're subject to other legislation that would oversee this. That's just my thought. I think it's covered elsewhere, and I think we're spending too much time on it.
That's what I think too. And that's why I like the broadness of undertaking municipal business, no matter where it is. So I'm comfortable with that, and I'm going to ask the clerk that's the direction to be considered, and we'll see where it goes. Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, I was just going to mention the clerk made a suggestion earlier about unvaccinated council members and committee members about then if they requiring testing. Will that be included in this broad general approach to the policy?
To you, Mayor Lawrence, if I understand the question correctly, yes, all of the other components of the policy would apply to members of council or members of boards, commissions, and committees. Yeah, so the requirement either to be vaccinated or to be tested.
Okay.
If it applies to staff, it would apply to members. Is sort of the direction that we're going right now.
Okay.
All right, clerk, help me. Are we still at a straw poll here for something, and we're at the straw poll for
whether or not the policy will apply to members of council and members of committees, with the caveat that it applies when they're conducting municipal business, and whether or not you want to include the proviso that it would only be applicable for in-person situations. So, for example, if councillors Cassidy and Lego wish to meet virtually by Zoom and have a conversation, then those provisions wouldn't apply. If
Okay,
that's the desire.
does that that seems redundant. I thought this was all about in person, but I'm okay with it. Councillor Lego.
What if two unvaccinated councillors want to meet?
They would, in accordance
No,
with
no, no.
policy, then they would both need to show each other their negative antigen test.
Okay, well, that's not going to happen.
Well, I would just say that then they're not conducting municipal business. They're talking in general about matters of interest to both of them. I think we're parsing this to death. Are we ready to? So essentially, clerk, we're doing a straw poll on half the motion that's on the floor with a slight amendment to it.
Well, the motion right now is just asking that council provide direction. We're just seeking that direction. Yeah.
So, I'm sorry. I want to be clear before I call a vote here. What am I calling a vote on?
So, Mayor Lawrence, if you wish to amend the first part of the resolution, we can do that so that it's already built in there as opposed to direction to staff. So if that's the preference, it could read that council provides direction to staff.
Clerk, okay, yeah, go ahead.
Members of council and members of council's boards, commissions, and committees are included in the municipal COVID-19 policy.
Good. With the direction and something about the direction given to staff through this.
Yes, we can add that. Yeah, after the word COVID-19 vaccination policy, as per direction to staff, we would add those words as well.
As amendments that provided through direction to staff. Okay. All right. And then is the second part of this on the council authorizes the passing?
Yes.
Okay. So that's already been read with that amendment that you've just provided. We do have a mover, and that was Councillor Howie.
It was Councillor Bath.
Sorry, Councillor Bath. Councillor Bath, are you okay with the amendment to the resolution?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
And I don't need to ask the seconder now, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so it's on the table as amended, and I guess I will just ask for any, not to reiterate what we've already said, but any final discussion. Councillor Timpson.
Can there just be some sort of a value statement that councillors will respect pandemic precautions such as distancing and so on as per provincial recommendations, so that vaccinated or unvaccinated, we still have to respect the distancing and the masking, because we know that vaccinated people will still get sick and will still transmit. Is there some way we can just put in there some kind of a statement that council members are expected to, and as you say, you can't police it, but that council members are expected to respect the pandemic precautions as recommended.
Clerk, are you working on that, or?
Yes, through your Mayor Lawrence, if there's concurrence among the members to have wording to that effect added, we can certainly add that into the policy as well.
It seems fairly broad and all right. Council, any objectors? I see none. So any further discussion before the vote is called, Council? Okay, this will be a recorded vote, and just my discussion, the only thing I would say is I think, I appreciate the discussion and I appreciate everybody being respectful. There are obviously opposing views, and that's fine. That's the way the system works. And that's where I take my cue is obviously I have an opposing view, maybe opposing values or ideology to the naysayers. Doesn't mean to say I don't respect their right to have an opinion and the fact that they've researched and based their opinion on what they believe. But I also sit here as a member of council, and I always my balance on what I'm going to decide is based on what I think is best for the community at large. And where does the community at large think? Sometimes I think we have to lead, and sometimes you might lead against what the community at large is thinking. My take on the community at large is that they will expect this of council. That's my take. Community at large, and obviously not everybody in it. I have spoken and taken time to speak to people who oppose the vaccine. It doesn't change my view or my view on what I think is best for the common good or the community at large. So that's my discussion before we call the vote. Thank you for that. I'll turn it to you, clerk, to do the recorded vote.
Thank you, Mayor Lawrence.
I wanted to speak on that.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Councillor. I did invite the council to speak, and as usual, I take the last position to speak. But please go ahead. I had invited.
So, I just did want to also state that I do appreciate those comments, Mayor Lawrence. I understand that there are opposing views, and I just wanted to say to staff, although it may seem critical, I hope there is nothing personal taken out of context. It is merely my position and the way I feel in the situation, and I respect staff in the position they're in as well, and I understand where they're coming from. And yeah, that's all I wanted to add. So
thank you, Councillor Cassidy. And thumbs up, Councillor Lego, to staff. Thanks, staff. Okay, so I didn't let us proceed with the recorded vote, clerk.
To you, Mayor Lawrence, thank you. So we will start with the mover, and I'll attempt to go around the screen as it appears to me in a counterclockwise direction. Councillor Bath, yay or nay?
Yay.
Sorry, I actually
maybe yes or no. Maybe yes or no is better.
Maybe yes or no. Sorry, that was a yes. Okay, thank you. Councillor Howie, yes or no in support of the motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy, yes or no in support of the motion?
No.
Thank you. Councillor Lego, yes or no in support of the motion?
No.
Thank you. Councillor Timpson, yes or no in support of the motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Fenelon, yes or no in support of the motion?
You're muted, Councillor Fenelon.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Mayor Lawrence, yes or no in support of the motion?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Lawrence. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes in favor and 2 votes against.
So the motion is carried. Thank you, Council. Good, a difficult but a good discussion, and we carry on. And now it's our job to support Council's decision. All of us in the best way we can. Thank you, and thank you, staff, for bringing that forward. And I concur with Councillor Cassidy's comments there. Good. Delegations, presentations, no. Bylaws, we're at bylaws. Oh, you've been busy, clerk. Do you want to rest, or can you handle it?
I'm still alive and kicking, so
I know you have a head cold, and if you want to put it back to me, you go ahead. It's up to you.
No, that's fine. I think we're okay here. I can read them for you if you like. My pleasure.
Thank you.
So the following bylaws are being presented to council for consideration and first, second, and third reading. The first is bylaw number 95-21, being the bylaw to amend bylaw number 54-20, being the bylaw to establish a health and safety policy manual for the corporation of the municipality of Sioux and to adopt certain health and safety policies. Bylaw number 115-21.
Councillor
Bylaw
Fenlon,
number
you need to mute.
21, being a bylaw to authorize and direct the mayor and the clerk to execute a transfer payment agreement between the corporation of the municipality of Sioux and Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Ontario, as represented by the Ministry of the Solicitor General. This is respecting the Victim Support Grant 2021 through 2023. Bylaw number 116-21 being a bylaw to provide for the 2022 interim tax levy and late payment charges. Bylaw number 117-21 being a bylaw to authorize the temporary borrowing of monies to meet the current expenditures of the corporation of the municipality of Sioux. Bylaw number 118-21 being a bylaw to authorize and direct the mayor and the clerk to execute a contribution agreement between the corporation of the municipality of Sioux and the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation, NOHFC, for the Hillcrest Development Project. And finally, bylaw number 122-21 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 87-20, being a bylaw to establish a health and safety policy manual for the corporation of the municipality of Sioux and to adopt certain health and safety policies as amended, COVID-19 vaccination policy. The motion then, Mayor Lawrence, is that bylaws number 95-21, 115-21, 116-21, 117-21, 118-21, and 122-21 be read a first, second, and third time and passed.
Moved by Councillor Fanlon, seconded by Councillor Howie. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Clerk. We do have a notice of motion to reconsider Cedar Bay Development Plan submitted by Councillor Cassidy. Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Lawrence. I can read the notice of motion, and then when we get to the point where there is a recommendation, we would just be looking for a mover and seconder. The mover, of course, will be Councillor Cassidy, as it's his notice. Then we would be asking for a seconder. No discussion at this meeting, and then it would be discussed at the January regular council meeting. If you like, Mayor Lawrence, I can read the notice of motion.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Given that the municipality, is the current owner of the only two parcels of land that make up the outdoor recreational facility known as Cedar Bay, and given that the cabins and infrastructure in this area have fallen into a state of disrepair over the years, especially after the recent wind events this year in Sioux, and given that in 2012, Council approved the Cedar Bay Development Plan that provided direction for the development of the facilities at Cedar Bay. Also, taking into fact that in the recent municipal guiding documents, strategic plan, sports tourism strategy, municipal services delivery review, community safety and well-being plan, Cedar Bay was a common discussion item that members of the public felt had much potential to be a premier outdoor recreation space, among other possibilities. And given that over the past decades, the dynamic of organizations in Sioux has changed, along with the needs of these organizations and the community, I would ask Council to consider providing the following direction to staff. That Council directs staff to create an ad hoc committee of Council for the purpose of updating the Cedar Bay Development Plan through input from community organizations and the public.
So, Clerk, there's no discussion. What we're voting on whether we bring this forward to the next meeting?
Yes, so through you, Mayor Lawrence, in this case, we would be asking for the mover, which would be Councillor Cassidy, and then we would be asking for a seconder, and if there is a seconder, then it would automatically come to Council in January.
Oh, I see. So there's no vote on this. It's just, so the mover, Councillor Cassidy, you're still moving this? Is there a seconder for this motion? There is, and we'll put it down as Councillor Bath.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And that's that. Okay, good. And we'll see that at the next meeting. Thank you. And outside resolutions, requests for endorsement. There are none. Members of council reports. Start with Councillor Fanlon at the top of the screen there.
I don't think I've attended any meetings at all. I missed LCC meeting because we were meeting on Monday night. And that's it.
Thank you. Councillor Howie.
It's been a relatively quiet past month. Quite busy with vaccine clinics in the region and talking to people and promoting that. A reminder that for those that are eligible to get their booster, I believe the province just amended their eligibility for the booster shot. So be sure to check out if you are eligible and consenting to get your vaccine, do so. But other than that, I wish everyone a Merry Christmas.
I guess we're at that time. That's right. Councillor Bath.
That's pretty quiet. It doesn't seem that way, but we've done a hydro meeting and our didn't have a PACE meeting this month. And seeing Hub Transit's been on the agenda lately, I'm going to suggest that I have been to some Hub Transit meetings, so you'll probably hear from that more now. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Lego.
Yeah, just the closed session meeting on Monday. We were supposed to have a meeting yesterday for the Committee of Adjustment, but that application was pulled. So found out late yesterday morning. So, and that's everything. Just busy doing other things.
I'm sure. Thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, thank you. Environment Committee. Did some good discussion with regards to the status of the Environment Committee as a committee of council, and it was pretty unanimous that the Environment Committee wants to remain a committee of council. They like the role they're in right now, and they feel that's the best way for them to make an impact in the community, which is good. Was some discussion about the recycling issues. I was glad to see the municipality did come out with some updated recommendations with regards to some of the recycling issues that have happened. We had some other discussions, and I'll be following up with just the Public Works Manager on some of that stuff, just to maybe bring back some clarity on some of the issues back in the Environment Committee. And yeah, so it is, that was it. And just the other special council meetings and things like that. I attended the Christmas party for the staff. Good turnout, very good time. Really good for morale. It was nice to see. And yeah, a shout out to the staff and everyone that attended and all the staff that put the work in on that. That was very well done. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm low on sock tape, so we'll be stopping by a store on Front Street to pick some up.
Thank you. Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, I attended a meeting of the Kenora District Municipal Associations, and at that point we discussed the resolutions that are coming to the AGM in the middle of January. And I just wanted maybe the mayor, when you do your update, you could report as to whether there's any other further resolutions coming from Sioux Lookout. I believe the TRC meeting didn't occur because of lack of quorum. I attended a library board meeting virtually. As you know, we've hired a new CEO. We're still looking for an assistant librarian, and hopefully there will be somebody locally that will step up to that position. In my Cedar Bay activities, I was involved in organizing the craft fair and worked closely with the municipality on figuring out how to do it according to protocols and precautions, and it actually turned out fairly well. We had fewer vendors and fewer people, patrons, but people seem to be very happy about it. We and thanks to the municipality, the municipal staff for helping us with that, Michelle. It was very helpful. I attended the Christmas party, which, as Joe said, was really quite fun. I really quite enjoyed myself. And oh yes, the Environment Committee, in which Joe reiterated the great discussion we had about how the committee should move forward in the future. I had myself videoed for my Christmas message, and yeah, I hope all council members will go and get yourself videoed and wish happy holidays to everybody out there. And tomorrow, Michelle and Connor and I are going to judge Christmas lights, right, Connor? Michelle? Yeah, okay. Yeah, and so that was my month.
Thank you. Have I been to everybody? I think so. Just my biggest meetings this month have been with my back and sciatica. Never had this before, but it was a I won't get into the details of what caused it, but it's only in the last 3 or 4, remarkably how it crescendoed to just agony, and in the last 3 or 4 days, it's just dramatic. It lasted about a month, and now it's disappearing in a matter of days. Residual effects, but those were my biggest meetings, with multiple yoga positions I've never seen before, squirming and twisting. But due to the ability to meet virtually, I've been able to carry on with the Northwestern Health Unit Alpha Conference, the Provincial Alpha Fall Conference, photo opportunity with the Police Services Board for the RIDE program, Northwestern Health Unit board meetings, executive committee meetings, and other chair duties that I've been undertaking. The Lac Sioux First Nation Council meeting that I mentioned earlier. That was the one thing that I traveled to in person. That was at the beginning of the month when I was just beginning my squirming. OPP billing webinar that I attended with the, it was a general webinar for education purposes that Michelle and I, the CIO and I attended. Police Services Board special meetings related to intox detentions, let's say, and methods to address that. And you're seeing some of that come through our special council meetings, and the initiative now that has gone out is public, let's say, because a letter has gone out to multiple agencies regarding our initiative, our pilot project with closing the LCBO on Sundays. You would all, I hope, have had a copy of that by now. Special council meetings. I attended an AMO Health Task Force, which was, again, it was Minister Thibodeau, the Minister of Health, Minister of Addictions, Mental Health and Addictions. Thank you. You're getting there, CIO. And it's about the opioid crisis. And so I listen and listen. At the end of it, as usual, I put up my hand and say, we haven't solved the alcohol crisis in Silicate, and this is what it's about. M3C, the Municipal Coordination Committee. We had a meeting of the Coordination Committee. Attended a meeting with the CAO and the planning, the Development Services Coordinator. That let me get this right. NDMNRF, Northern Developments. You go ahead, Joe. You can do this.
I still haven't figured it out, and I work for them, so.
Well, they put one on the Crown land, the disposition of Crown land to municipalities, and they're seeking input around the province, and we were invited to provide input, and we did. And since then, they've got back to us a few times, and Jody has written to them with additional comments on their meeting summary, and so it's a true engagement. Where it goes, I'm not sure. And another special council meeting. That's my month. And I was sorry to miss the Christmas party, but I was not in shape to attend on Saturday night. Glad it went off, and I think we do have a short closed session at the end of this, do we? Or we have to move into closed session now? The council moves into closed session at 8:16 p.m. to discuss matters of a general nature about an individual, including municipal or local board employee, per Municipal Act 2001 as amended. One item, appointments to council boards, commissions, and committees membership. So we will move into closed session. We'll do the join, and I'll see you there.
resignation, Jamie McLeod from the Environment Committee, and Candace Carter Chiquetto from the Sioux Lookout Public Library Board.
Moved by Councillor Cassidy, seconded by Councillor Fallon. Whoop, there's Councillor. Oh dear. All in favor? Carried. And we have one last motion before we adjourn for the Christmas break. Well, not quite, I suppose. There's some of us returning to work. That bylaw number 1/2021 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Silicote, December 15, 2021, regular council meeting be read a first, second, and third time and passed. Moved by Councillor Bath, seconded by Councillor Timpson. All in favor? Carried. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to one and all.
No?
You as well.
Christmas, everyone.
Hope you feel better, Brian
Thank you.
and Mayor Lawrence. Hope you're feeling better.
I am feeling better.
Yeah.
Don't worry. I'm not 100%, but when you're 95% of what I was, it's wonderful.
Oh, I know that feeling.